Hi guys, welcome to another edition of All Things Football. With me, I've got the resident ATF correspondent Ziad Parker, and then we've also got a special guest today. He is, now let me go through his CV because it's got quite an impressive list. He is qualified as a licensed FIFA agent at the age of 23. He is brand manager and marketing manager of Santos Football Club, and he's also the director of ATP Sports Law Consultants and Cape Coliseum Management. So his name is Khalied. Ali, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Just to clear it up, it was previous brand manager of Santos, not anymore.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up, but it's still quite an impressive list. So I think let us get into it. Tell us about a bit how you got into football and, being an agent. How did this all start and where did that journey begin?
Well, I think, from a very young age, I was involved with sport through my dad. My dad's Allie. He played provincial cricket in his younger years. He was the chairman of Santos. He was previously the manager of Santos, and he was a selector at Western Province Cricket as well. So sport was always going to be a area that I was quite passionate about. I personally played cricket. I played soccer, but getting into the whole football industry or the sports industry, I think was always a no-brainer from a very young age. But getting into the agency aspect of it was, as I grew up, I was very involved with the club, and I watched how players that needed guidance and needed assistance were taken advantage of by agents, because if you read nowadays the amount of money that is being thrown around to agents and players, and that people think it's quick, easy money, and they find a talented player and they just use them purely for their own benefit and for their own financial gain. So at the time that I decided to do my agent's license, that at 22, 23 years old, you see all these big names, these big agents, and you think to yourself, that's something I can do. And for me, the main thing behind doing it at that time and at that age was, at Santos, I saw how agents were taking advantage of players, and they weren't giving them the right guidance. They were more worried about what their salary was going to be more than the focusing on the football aspect of things. And so that's how I decided, what, guys, yes, I'm still young. How do me as a 22, 23-year-old guide a person my age, or guide a 25, 26-year-old player but I think from that aspect, it was more the footballing side of it more than the external off-field aspect of it that got me into wanting to be an agent. And at that point, I was just a very, very small fish in a big pond, because the likes of Mike McCabe, Glenn Binken, all those guys that have been in the game years, and me, this young kid, water behind the ears in the industry from that angle. It just it was a bit daunting, but eventually the fact that I had the knowledge of the industry because of Santos, it helped quite substantially, and the fact that the network I had built because of Santos, and that helped a lot in the initial years. So from why and how I got into it, I think it was almost a no-brainer because of the being brought up in the industry.
Yeah, so Khalid, very interesting, obviously, listening to where you've come from. And obviously, we've known each other for quite a while. So having seen some of that myself, I can attest to what you're saying. And just while you're on that and your personal experience, if you could maybe just elaborate on some of the more memorable transactions that you've been involved in as an agent.
I think for me, one of the most I won't say it was a transaction. I'd say it's more an achievement of a client. In 2013, 2014, I managed a player called Khalied. Ziad, I think you worked with him when you were
at the beginning,
at the beginning, yeah. And one of the most memorable things that I can say is when Fakhri made his senior national team debut, and making him the youngest footballer to represent South Africa at senior national level, and I think he still holds that record. So for me, I don't think any specific transaction was the most memorable thing for me since I've become an agent. I think that for me is the most memorable part of what I've been doing over the years. And I have represented guys that have played in the national team, the likes of Alizar Rogers, Erwin Isaacs, Ryan Chapman, Fakhri himself, so, but from a most memorable perspective, I think the record or Fakhri making his senior national team debut as the youngest player to represent the country has been the most memorable thing for me as an agent, intermediary, or business manager. That we've got so many different names nowadays.
Yeah.
But from that perspective, I think that's been the most memorable thing for me, rather than any specific transaction.
No, that's fantastic, man. Congratulations on that. And what I'm hearing also is, Wasim, I think Khalied's going to help us get some more guests down the line. So I'm quite excited about that also. We're definitely going to use this connection now. But Wasim, you had a question for Khalied about Santos specifically?
Yeah, seeing that you've got some history with the club, I remember Santos being a top club in South Africa at that stage, 2001, more or less, when they won the PSL. But a lot of people wonder, and what has happened to the club? Where are they now? And so, do you have any answers with regards to where the club is at and where they're headed in the next coming years? Because I would love to see them back in the PSL and in the professional ranks. So where are they now?
I think that's I get that question a lot from people saying, what has happened to Santos? There's just been this slide over the past couple of years. And I think, one looks at football in general. You have times where clubs go through a massive slump or a massive downslide, and at some point they make that turn. A perfect example is Leeds. Leeds went to, I think they were in tier 4 or 5 at one point. And obviously they made a turn and things started getting better. And I think all clubs at some point have to go through that rephasing, out with the old and in with the new. And sometimes it's done quite easy. It's quite simple. Some clubs have to go through a massive drop before that change gets made. I think a big thing at Santos was there was a lot of staleness and players that were there purely for the money and not actually for the right reasons. A perfect example, I won't mention a name, but there was a player that the year Santos got relegated from the NFD, Santos signed a player he was a senior player. He was in his late 20s, and he played in the national team. He played in the PSL, all of that. And, he was signed at Santos to help the younger guys. And after one of the games, there was about 6 or 7 games left in the season. And he came out of the change room. They had lost the game, and he was laughing. He was jovial, all of that. And somebody asked him, how can you be so happy? You guys are fighting relegation, and you're coming out of the change room making plans to go out later. And he said, it doesn't bother me. I'm still getting my salary end of the month. And for a player of a senior player that has represented the country, that has played, PSL, to have that type of attitude, it obviously rubs off on the younger players. And you know what? It came out that there was a handful of players that had that same attitude, and and you know, it's a lot of people say, yeah, but you know, it's the coach, it's the management, it's this, it's that. But to a certain point, you know, the management can only be held that much, you know, they can only hold so much of the liability, because when the players step out on the field, who's the ones getting the results? Who's the ones playing the game? You know, it's not like FIFA, where I can sit and, you know, I can have the 11 worst players on FIFA, and I can still win the game with them because, you know, I know how to. I'm an excellent FIFA player. You know what I mean? So from that perspective, I think it does throw a lot of my personal opinion. What has happened to Santos, I think, is a good thing from a perspective of they've had to restructure, they've had to do everything from the ground up again. And I think what is planned and what is expected over the next couple of years, I think we are looking, or there's a strong possibility of a Leeds resurgence, if you want to call it that. So hopefully within the next 2, 3, 4 years, Santos will be back up where everybody knows them to be and expects them to be. So yeah.
Let's hope so. I definitely would be very happy with that, especially as I followed them, and I attended quite a few games, you know, when I was younger, and they were a good club. So I still have a soft spot for them, and I hope everything of the best for them. But I just wanted to ask you also with regards to the South African market and the European market. When I look at when I follow my club, I support Newcastle United. When I follow them, you know, and the transfer news, you know, you get a sense that first the clubs get involved, and then, you know, they give permission for players to get involved for personal terms and so on. How does that, the European transfer window, how does that compare with the South African market? Is it quite similar, quite professional, or is it the case of where players get tapped up and they get involved with clubs personally, and then, you know, deals get struck afterwards? How does it compare with Europe?
My dealings, I try and keep everything as professional as possible. I generally, if a club is interested in a client, I represent, they contact me and say, okay, look at this, we're interested. What is his position at the club? Would the club be interested? Would the club not be interested? Because I think from that perspective, or would the player be interested? Wouldn't the player be interested? Because I think it's also a matter of the club knowing whether there is some type of interest. You know, I think in South Africa you can be whichever player. If a Chiefs, Pirates, or Sundowns come, you know you're getting big money. And I think some players, 9 out of 10 players, would just take the opportunity because of that. A perfect example is if you look at Sundowns squad, they've got a squad of over 50 players. And it's unheard of in South African football. But if you look though, they play in the CAF Champions League, they play in all the local competitions. And there was at one point where they had a fixture in South Africa, and literally 2 days later they had a fixture in one of the African countries. And so they actually split their squad up. The team that played in Africa traveled, and the guys that were left behind fulfilled the fixture in South Africa. So I think okay, but I think Sundowns is a complete different story. Sundowns, you comparing Sundowns as a Man City, a PSG, a Chelsea of African football. You know, even you know, your Barcelona, Real Madrid level, but in Africa, purely based on their financial strength, their success over the past 10 years. You know, it's second to none. You know, in South Africa, I think they are the benchmark. But again, in South Africa, I think it would generally depend on the player that you're dealing with, or the agent that's involved. Because, you know, in South Africa, you've got 1,000 different agents. this one represents this player, this one represents, and not all of them are licensed, or not all of them are registered. Oh, I'm the manager of the player. Oh, I'm the player's cousin. I'm the player's brother. And I represent him, type thing. So as soon as some agents hear that, oh, Sundowns is interested in this player, they then start negotiations without engaging with the club that the player's at, and then try and push a deal through, saying, yeah, but the player wants to leave, the player's unhappy, that they find fault. And generally that's how a lot of the smaller transactions happen. But if you look over the past maybe 4 to 5 years in South Africa, the only clubs that are really buying of players is Chiefs and Pirates to a certain extent, and Sundowns. When Wits was around, in the initial phase of Wits, when they had the big money, they were buying players, going mad. And to the latter stages, they only started signing free players. And I think in South Africa, your players' movements are more free movements rather than transactions. Again, like I said, if I look at this transfer window, the only clubs that seem to have bought players was Sundowns, Chiefs, and Pirates. Your SuperSport, I don't even think bought a player. I think maybe Maritzburg United bought 1 or 2 players, but those were players coming from outside of the country. But generally in South Africa, over the past couple of years, I think the tendency has been more around signing free players, or doing swap deals where you get 2 players from Sundowns, and then your top player moves to Sundowns with a little bit of money, and then a 2 players to almost compensate for that. So I think from a South African perspective, it's clubs have gone more the route of free players. I won't even say promoting from the youth academies, because there's maybe 2 or 3 clubs that have excellent youth academies in South Africa. Ajax being one of them, but I think Ajax have also kind of fallen down the pecking order since Amsterdam's pull out. But I look at Sundowns, they've got one of the top facilities, they've got top coaches, but they very rarely bring of their youth players through. So I think what has happened in South Africa, it's you almost having the same players being recycled over and over and over again. They get a 2-year contract here, then their contract expires, then they move somewhere else for 2 years or 3 years. So it's a regurgitation of the same free players over and over and over. Again, like I said, I think Sundowns, Chiefs, and Pirates are the only ones really buying, and they themselves are so professionally run because of their reputations. They would never engage in tapping up of players prior to doing the actual inquiry with the clubs. So I think South Africa's transfer market compared to Europe is very different at this point. I think Europe, you can see, I think a perfect example is this whole Harry Kane saga, where Harry Kane stayed away from training. Then one news reporter says, oh, he's staying away because of him being unhappy, wanting to move. Then his Harry Kane story is nobody was given off. So I think in Europe, everything is done a little bit differently. But I think they also, in their running of things, they've also got strict rules and regulation when it comes to UEFA, where it comes to their various football federations that have these strict policies with regards to tapping up of players and that. So I think it's just I think there's a very fine line also when it comes to you're tapping up of players and actually inquiring with a player. It's for example, the perfect, like the Mbappe saga. Was Mbappe tapped up early, or was it purely Madrid doing the correct thing? So all those little things, I think it's also ways, there's also legitimate ways for you to tap up a player. You make your first inquiry to the club, you say, oh, here's the bid. Now in the player's mind, it's, oh, so and so is interested in me, and they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. The Man City saga. Kane knows City wants him, and it just continues and continues until a point where they're like, there's nowhere to go. So,
yeah, I think with that, just to jump in quickly, what you find is nowadays you can't stop people from talking to each other, man. Like if you and I have a conversation, we have a conversation on WhatsApp or Zoom call or something.
Exactly.
I mean, these players have friends playing for other teams, around the world, and it's like you mentioned with Harry Kane, for example.
Yeah.
He could be having a chat to a Man City player who's an England teammate of his, or a coach who he knows from back in the day, or whatever the case is. And and it's a bit loose. Like, do you call that tapping up, or is that just two friends having a conversation? And
exactly,
because you brought up Kane, something I wanted to ask you about is, do you think? Firstly, just correct me if I'm wrong. I think Harry Kane's agent is his brother, or it's a family member, something along those lines.
I think
so do you think that his representation mishandled his situation? Could he have gotten a different outcome, or because he signed this long 6-year deal with no opt-out or no release clause, that he has no leverage? What are your thoughts on that?
I think when it comes to something like that, I think the fact that he had such a long-term contract in place leaves all the power with Tottenham. As much as he wants to kick and scream and do what he wants, your contract states you here till whatever, 2024, 2025, 2026, wherever the contract expires, you will fulfill your contract. If you want to go, this is our asking price. And I think it release clauses also, it shows no good faith, because if you put a release clause into your contract, what is that telling the club? I want out. If somebody comes, I want out. Yeah. So you're showing no loyalty to the club that is now spending a fortune on buying you. So, you can't expect the club, for example, let's use Spurs and City, for example. You can't expect City to spend 150 million on you, and then you want to put a release clause of 100 million. It makes no business sense. And because City are not just spending 150 million on you. They are spending 150 million plus 10 million a year on salaries, plus bonuses, plus this, plus that. So if a 5-year deal at let's say 10 million a year is costing City 150 plus another 50 million. So the whole deal is costing them 200 million, and you want to be released for 100 million if another club comes around. It shows, again, like I said, it shows no good faith. If, for example, they say, well, my whole transaction is worth 200 million, and so you say, okay, well, after 1 year, my release clause is 160. After 2 years, it's 170. After 3 years, it's 180. You've got to be fair to all parties. So I think a release clause in contracts, and I think that is why clubs like Barcelona and Real Madrid, if you look at some of their release clauses on some of their big players, it's absurd. 500 million euros, $1 billion a year. And,
man, not even big players. Trincao, that played for Wolves against United, has like a half a billion release clause. Like, he's done nothing yet. But I suppose with that, you're paying also for the development. Like you said, if every year it gets more, there has to be some sort of compromise. I look at the NBA 100%. As an example. I follow that quite closely. The player empowerment era is well, it's going strong at the moment, where the players control everything. They move when they want to. But the catch there is that they're signing shorter contracts with early opt-outs, and you have to give up the security. I mean, obviously, if you sign a 6-year deal, you're saying that this is where you want to be and you want the guaranteed money. But if you're willing to bet on yourself, I'm going to sign a 3-year deal with an opt-out in the second year, or a player option, or whatever the case is, and like you say, your release clause, it goes up the longer you spend at the club, because the club is putting development in you. But do you think that, I mean, obviously next season there's this bumper free agency, that everyone's building up to. There's so many guys in the last year of their contracts, like Pogba and Mbappe, just to mention a few. Do you think that this is kind of the future where players are going to run their contracts down so that they have the freedom to choose where they want to go, and the clubs that are taking them don't have to spend 150 million as a transfer fee? They can put all that money into wages, signing on fees, agent fees, and so on.
I think that's going to be a bit of a catch-22, because again, I'm going to go back to the Mbappe situation. Mbappe wants Madrid. Madrid wants Mbappe. Come end of the season, Barcelona might come in, Man City might come in, Liverpool might come in, Bayern Munich might come in. Now, now you're all fighting for the same player for free.
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be a whole lot of negotiations going on. This one offering 100 million a year, or, well, that's a stupid amount, but this one offering 15 million, this one offering 20, and everybody's going to try and outbid each other. Now, that also becomes, now you don't know whether you're going to get the player or not. Whereas if you buy him with a year left in his contract at whatever the fee is, but again, you sign a Ronaldo, you sign a Messi, you sign guys that have, even Beckham in his heyday. Signing players like that had massive spin-offs. There was, nowadays you look, when Messi signed for PSG, PSG's Instagram and social media following doubled.
Yeah.
Ronaldo, the day the announcement was made that United had signed, he hadn't even been officially announced as a United player, but it was confirmed. Their stock price went up by 8%. So, when it comes to those types of things, you're going to spend money on it, and what you're investing in. You're going to get, apparently with PSG, in the first weekend of Messi signing, they sold 100 million euros worth of Messi replicas. Michael Jordan made 5 million. Because
Sergio Ramos, Gerard Pique, his company bought like the TV rights. It's like
for Spain, for League One. And you can see that is purely based on what the value Messi brings to the league. Messi's debut had the highest League One viewership. So when it comes to signing certain players, you will bend your back, or you'll break your back to spend that money. You'll go above and beyond, because you know what the spin-offs are. But back to, and I think we've kind of veered off the question. Wasim, what was the question again?
Kane and Man City, do you think it was a good thing that the way they did it, or could they have done it differently?
I don't think there was. I think the way that it was done was, here's our offer, this is what. But I think it was all still very speculative. And the fact that Tottenham was so adamant that they didn't want to let him go, and if they were going to let him go, it had to be at their price, I think put a massive dampener on the whole transaction. And I think Harry Kane himself is at that stage in his career where he's at his peak. He wants to go somewhere where he's going to be winning trophies. And I think that the big thing for footballers is, I want to win. You can be how dedicated to a club, and you're not winning, it's not worth staying. And I think he, again, like I said, I think he's at that stage in his career where winning is now taken over your love for your club. So I think the way it was handled wasn't handled brilliantly, but again, the situation that he was put in, or the situation he was in, or still is in, would determine how that type of transaction would have happened. Again, if it was a year left in his contract, the whole situation would have been different. The whole negotiation would have been different. because now do Tottenham cash in on a player like that, or do they say, okay, well, you know what, I'll keep him for another year, but in their position, holding on to Harry Kane is not going to win them the league. Holding on to Harry Kane is not going to win them the Champions League. So, you know, do you cash in and that? Whereas, you know, Mbappe, I think PSG are looking at it from a perspective of, you know, our aim is to win the Champions League, and Mbappe can make that difference. Yes, with Messi, with the quality that they brought in around him, yes, Mbappe can be a game changer, somebody that can actually, you know, win you a game. So I think different types of players or different situations would actually determine how a transaction would happen. But again, in Harry Kane's situation, I think City are not overly concerned whether they get him or not, because, you know, the depth in their squad already is second to none.
Yeah, I mean, the market is a bit limited because only one club can afford the fee. But I think just to wrap that one up, unfortunately, at the time that he signed the deal, he believed that Spurs were going to win trophies. And I mean, look, they got to the Champions League final. Achieved more than they actually did. And he believed in the project. I mean, to sign a 6-year deal, either that or you got bad advice from around you to not have any route out of it, you know? There's talk of that gentleman's agreement. And at the end of the day, when the success of your club's on the line, you're not just going to let your prized asset walk away and not have someone who can fill his boots, because there aren't many. And so, yeah, I mean, for that, definitely. But for me, Khalied, last question from my side, and then I'll hand it back to Asim to wrap up. But just for the Ronaldo situation, if you could just briefly, because obviously time, we're running out of time here, but just from your perspective, the Ronaldo situation, obviously it was dragged out on social media and so on. But do you think that there was any chance he was actually going to City, or was this all just a move for him to end up at United or Madrid, back to one of his clubs that he was at before?
I think, you know, as a football enthusiast, for me, when I heard the saga starting, I was like, please go to PSG. You know, just from a perspective of every single football fan, follower, fanatic, irrespective whether you Barcelona, Real Madrid, Man United, whatever, to have a team where both Ronaldo and Messi would be, you know, an absolute dream come true. Just from I think commercially, it would have been one of the most amazing commercial deals for PSG, for League One, all of that, because I think the ratings would be the ratings would have skyrocketed, the TV deals, the sponsorship deals, and I think that would have been, from a business perspective, it would have been phenomenal. I think but back to Ronaldo's City possibility, I think it was all hype to get United or Real Madrid to make a move. Because if you look at how quickly, in a space of 12 hours, United made a bid, terms were agreed, he was announced. I think it was a brilliant marketing. But when I say marketing, not from a commercial marketing, I just say from a player marketing perspective. George Mendes knew exactly how to do it, to get that deal done as quickly as possible. And he could go there and say, well, this is what City had discussed with me. You match it or you don't. And for United, it was, do we allow one of our biggest potential marketing assets to go to our competitor? Do we allow our biggest superstar that has ever been at Man United to go to our biggest rivals? So I think it was also a matter of good agents work by Mendes to mention City, because if you look, there was no other big hype around the deal besides, there were talks of Real Madrid, there were talks of PSG, but City was this big thing for about a week or so. And then all of a sudden United came in at the end, he signed for United. And so I think it was a structured plan of Mendes to get it over the line. And like I said, you know, it happened so quickly because in the space of 12 hours, it was from City. He had agreed to terms with City to have, oh, United are in the race. United have signed him, done deal. So I think it was part of a plan.
No, it seemed like a very good plan, well executed. At the end of the day, not many people could have afforded a big transfer fee for him or were willing to put that out, and even the wages for that matter. So yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think it was well executed. And you know, sometimes, you know, from a neutral perspective, it's good to see those things work. Unfortunately, one club was used. But at the end of the day, all United fans are happy. Their prodigal son comes home, and we move forward. Wasim, over to you, mate.
Yeah, just want to say thank you. We've reached our limit in terms of time today, but I think, Khalied, we need to have you on again just so we can delve into some more topics because there's lots to talk about. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for your time. I've really enjoyed this, and hopefully sometime down the line you can get yourself on or get some guests on for us, and we'll highly appreciate that. So thank you again.
No, anytime. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun, man. You know, we could chat forever, but we're definitely gonna call on you again because there's lots to talk about in football. And I think also with the show, a lot of people, you know, get to see behind the scenes and hear about what actually happens within, you know, the South African football and just behind the scenes in general, which is fantastic for the viewers to get to know more about. So yeah, awesome. I enjoyed it. Thanks, Khalied. Thanks, Wasim.
No, thanks. Thank you guys. You know, I enjoyed this, you know, and like you said, you know, we can definitely do it more often.